Hey, and welcome back to another installment of Off the Beaten Path. In today's episode, we're traveling to Cincinnati, Ohio to visit Handshake Drums. Matt Seymour has spent most all of his life drumming, but only within the last 5 years began his journey of painting and building drums. In his short time developing his craft, he's created some of the most unique looking drums you'll see anywhere. He's worked with top call drummers from around the country, in addition to collaborating alongside other drum companies like CNC and Ludwig. Before we get too far into the video, I want to remind you that I'm creating new episodes in this series each month, so make sure to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all of my future video releases. And without any further ado, let's take a look behind the scenes at Handshake Drums.
Going on?
Hey Matt, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good.
Come on in. Welcome to the warehouse.
Yeah,
And,
so this is a new spot for you, right?
Yeah, I just moved here from another old shop, yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine for the kind of work you do, it's like, yes, you could set up a workstation in your garage or something, but having a commercial space and maybe a unit in a warehouse is really useful for some of the dirtier, messier tasks you're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to have some work, home separation and have a shop like this to come to, so I'm really fortunate, yeah.
Yeah, and this space is like 6 floors, huge footprint. There's probably, 100 different people?
I think there's close to 100 shops kind of subdivided in here, different band rehearsal spaces and people making all kinds of stuff, woodworking shops and, all kinds of things.
Cool. Well, let's go up and check out your spot.
All right, let's go. So come on in, this is it. This is two businesses here, a wood shop and my drum shop. So it's a shared space, it works just great, so nothing fancy.
So before we get too far into learning about your process and everything that goes into finishing these drums, could you give me just a quick background of 1, how you got into drumming, and then 2, how that joined forces with the work you're doing now with Handshake Drums?
Yeah, so I've been in drums since I was probably 12. I had an uncle who gave me a Beatles era Ludwig drum set that he wasn't playing, so I really just fell in love with the drums, started messing with them, tuning them, taking them apart, playing them, and basically was self-taught. Would come home from school every day, and my parents had a bunch of records, so I would dig through and find Beatles records or other things that I could listen to with headphones and try to just learn how to play them. Took some lessons for a while, but I've just been in love with the drums at a deep level kind of ever since. So the painting part came about sort of late in life, so I would say I was a drum fanatic, tinkerer, owned a few sets over the years, but it was, I guess, in 2021 or so, COVID hit, and I'd been working in a commercial, pretty traditional sales career my whole career, and a friend gave me a Craviotto drum that he didn't like the bearing edges, and it was just a plain finished drum. He said, do whatever you want with this drum. He just gave it to me. So from there, I started studying how to refinish drums and looked into doing wraps and painting and started finding people that were using automotive paint, of course, to paint drums and guitars. Then I discovered a whole world of like people who spray flake and crushed glass into custom paint. So I started to look into all that. So really it started just a whole crazy process where I was kind of just like I self-taught myself the drums pretty much. I started to learn how to paint drums sort of as a side hustle passion that was spurred on by someone just giving me a really nice drum to try to do something fun with, so.
I guess it's a great point of around that time, YouTube had been a platform for learning since its infancy, but I don't know if it was what it was in 2020 when everyone started sharing and being stuck at home and developing skills for new hobbies. And I think learning how to do new things on YouTube exploded. So yeah. I imagine that or other internet forums was a great resource for learning how to do some of those techniques and moving beyond a can of spray paint or using a brush or something.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn to do on the internet right now, just by digging in and looking into YouTube, and also through Instagram and social media. I found a lot of people that helped mentor me and taught me a lot of these techniques that I use. And so it's been a lot of learning, a lot of self-learning, a lot of mentors that have helped me, and just a lot of making mistakes and willing to take risks and try different things and screw it up, so.
Well, let's go ahead and head into the shop and see a little bit more about the different tools you're using and the process that goes into working on these drums.
Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
So getting started with painting, I have a little bit of experience just DIYing with drums, but it's almost embarrassing of just using regular spray paint I buy off the shelf at a hardware store. What kind of equipment goes into doing finish work at this sort of level?
I mean, at this level, I'm using pretty much all automotive industrial products and paints that are expensive and are mixed at very specific ratios and have very specific, what they call pot life, which means once you mix the paint, you need to know, or whatever product you're using, you need to know exactly how long you have to spray it. So a lot of times you're mixing products with hardeners. So to get started to use those kinds of products, you really need what's called an HVLP spray system, which is a compressor that you use with what they call a gravity-fed gun. So I can show you one here. This is basically an HVLP gun, very standard in the automotive refinishing industry. These guns come in all different price ranges and purposes, but they're all basically designed to do specific things. So to get started with this, I basically bought the cheapest guns that I could at Harbor Freight that I could get to give me the quality that I wanted in the job that I was shooting. And then over time, as I've gotten more specialized and done this for a few years now, I've invested in some nicer guns. So this is a Japanese gun that's just for spray and clear coat that's probably a $500 gun. So you can get started with a $20 gun at Harbor Freight and an air compressor that, will compress enough air for you to spray, whatever it is you're spraying.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people overlook how valuable it could be starting on that sort of equipment, because you can get the job done with those cheap pieces of equipment, but you're gonna have to really refine your touch and your craft.
Yeah.
And then as you invest in nicer equipment, it usually makes your job a lot easier. So sometimes it could be good when you're learning to have to struggle with equipment that's not gonna do you any favors.
That's just right. I've definitely found that as I've honed my technique using a gun that does a pretty good job of spraying an even coat, as soon as I got really good at that gun and then decided to invest in a nicer gun, it got even easier to produce consistent, good results. So.
Yeah, and I think that's probably familiar to people in the drum world with starting out on your beginner drum set. You could spend a lot of time tuning it up, putting nice heads on, making it sound good.
Right.
And then when you get a really beautiful instrument, you don't have to work very hard to get a great sound out of it.
Totally. Appreciate it all the more too, I think. Yeah.
So for comparison, let's say a regular gallon of standard paint that you might use on a wall or something costs between $30 to $50.
Yeah.
A can of automotive grade paint would be close to what?
Some of the high custom paints that I use are by companies like House of Color, which is one of the most famous custom paints for like the lowrider and motorcycle world. Those paints are sometimes $300 a gallon. The primers and clear coats you're using can be equally as expensive, if not more, per gallon. So yeah, nothing's cheap in this world. It's not like going to Home Depot and buying rattle cans and
so there's probably some sort of middle ground that if people are starting out, maybe it's like, don't invest in that grade of paint quite yet until you've had a few practice runs so you can learn.
Yes.
With a little bit lower risk.
Yes. Yeah.
We know about using compressed air and the guns for application and using high quality materials. You have some really unique finish work options that you've done, like not just your standard glossy sheen, but incorporating sparkle and flakes and those kind of techniques.
Yeah.
That's a separate tool or ingredient that gets mixed in a lot of times with these different paints you're using.
Yeah, so what you can do is basically do like a spray lacquered finish where you're spraying metal flake or crushed glass right into your clear coat and burying that in clear coat so that you have a smooth finish with it's basically when you see like a metal flake bass boat or a guitar or something like that, someone has sprayed metal flake into a finish. So I do a lot of that where I'm using a couple different products. One is actual crushed glass, which a lot of people don't use. And then I use also some metal flake, which is metal flake. They call it metal flake, but it's actually mylar, where you're taking very fine plastic and cutting it up into uniform pieces and coloring it. That's what most metal flake is. So
yeah, there's a lot of detail that goes into that. I think what's funny too with painting, I was trying to reflect on the history of drums and finishing. When you look at like vintage, early Ludwig or Gretsch drums, you had the option of just a few different wraps. Now those wraps were like really cool and beautiful, a lot of sparkles or these oyster finishes. And the way that paint was used on those drums was to cover up mistakes.
Right.
So it wasn't really like this beautiful focal point of drums. It was like almost a deceit tactic to try to cover up imperfections in the shell So it's kind of cool that now it seems like the high-end option, but really in its infancy, it was like not at all in that case.
Right. Yeah, I think that's definitely when I look back on my approach to this, when I got that first drum that I had to decide what I wanted to do with. I've always been the kind of person that if I find something exciting that might be a harder way to do something to refinish like a drum, it was easy for me to go to try to learn how to doing the hard thing instead of just wrapping it and doing what, a lot of people were already doing. So again, I just fell down this rabbit hole of discovering that people historically had painted drums and guitars with automotive paint and decided I wanted to learn how to do that, but learn how to do it using some cutting edge techniques, like I said, with crushed glass and metal flake, and doing some design and things like that that people hadn't really seen before. And
Yeah.
also trying to combine modern techniques with some classic designs like full dress or the salesman sample.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that really drew me to what you were doing when I discovered your Instagram feed was you have this reverence for the history of drums. And what's cool is like a lot of those special techniques like the full dress drums or the salesman's, those were actually cut up pieces of wrap.
Right.
But you found a way of like changing the method of application and doing it with paint, which is cool because it's seamless.
Right.
You're not going to have the same challenges you do, or you don't have to tack on the triangle pieces from a full dress drum.
Right.
Which is really not that effective for like long-term hold, but it doesn't really look that pretty.
Right.
I know this is a working shop, so you don't just have dozens of drums in here and you just moved in, but you were showing me one drum that is finished that you have here to share.
Yeah.
That uses some of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You want to look at that one?
Yeah.
This is an example of a drum that I paint using crushed glass. This is a drum that I did in coordination with CNC drums. Basically what this is real crushed glass that I sprayed into a clear coat and sanded it flat. And then I created the salesman sample stripes using candy paint, which is kind of like a translucent base coat that you can layer over the crushed glass. So all of these lines and the black separating lines were all hand masked and hand painted.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing this drum or another one with the same technique at the Chicago show, and I mistakenly just assumed it was a wrap because it was so consistent, and I had never seen someone have such success and consistency with the application of the crushed glass.
Oh, thanks.
And the lines separating it. It's funny, it's like you're almost like showing the flaw in the wrap by having all the black lines, which might be the void or space in between them as it has shrunken over time.
Yeah.
But it's like done with such detail and perfection.
Right, right. I just wanted to copy that look as closely as I could, and this is what I came up with. So this is one of the more tedious jobs I do because, just the layers that go into this, you're basically taking a plain wood shell, applying a primer, then applying a base coat, then applying the crushed glass and a bunch of clear coat to bury that crushed glass. And then all the candy paint goes on top of that, all the taping and masking to do these lines. And then finally another layer of clear coat goes on top of that. So it's a pretty
so something
tedious
like
process.
that. I don't even want to ask you to guess how many hours would be into it. It's probably countless.
It's a lot.
But I mean, we're talking about somewhere between 15 and 25 different stages of applying
Yes.
different coats of paint.
Yeah. In every one of those steps, everything has to go right. A lot of times you're troubleshooting, or if a layer doesn't set up just right, or if you have dust get in your clear coat, you have to mitigate some issues like that. So
yeah, and that's definitely a testament why having this space where you have like good ventilation and you can control the airflow
right,
and really dial in your machinery is important.
Totally. Yeah. It might be helpful to show you kind of the raw material that goes into that. Like I said, when you buy metal flake, you can buy metal flake a lot of different places, but you can't get real crushed glass too many places. So this is real crushed glass that I buy by the kilo in 3 different grits: coarse, fine, and extra fine.
Does it come in little plastic baggies that you get like behind the gas station?
Something like that, yeah, by the kilo, yeah. So the way this works is I spray a wet clear coat of something first, and then dry spray this into that clear coat, and then cover it up with more layers of clear coat as they cure and set up. So
I can see why these techniques are not like widely used in mass production model drum sets. Because it's just like, one, it's a highly specialized skill that someone has to develop.
Yeah.
And then 2, just the amount of time it takes to apply this many coats is really a challenge. It's not cost effective for a mass produced drum.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Yeah.
And this brings up a good point. You were talking about this drum was in collaboration and partnership with CNC, which is a pretty big brand that many people are familiar with.
Yeah.
And you've had the opportunity, aside from partnering with a lot of great drummers that people would know, you've worked with some companies to help kind of bring to life some designs that they can't do in-house, right?
The best example of working with other drum companies is that I was approached by Ludwig and have a relationship with them, have done some special like one-off projects for them for some of their artists, a couple of their special things. It was really kind of an honor to have done, and maybe doing some more stuff with them in the future. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's got to be so validating and rewarding, because I really didn't understand how late you started this,
Yeah.
process of learning how to do this.
Yeah.
I had assumed you'd been doing it for 10 years and you only started sharing it on social media
Yeah.
around the time of the pandemic. So
Yeah. There was a little bit of satisfaction, I'll say, in putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this and learning how to do these things, and then have the guys at Ludwig, who are great, reach out and have me do some jobs for them because they recognized my work. Yeah, that was pretty humbling, to be honest with you. So,
yeah, that's amazing.
yeah. I mean, that was the first kit I was given, was a Ludwig kit. And, I know everyone kind of has their different drum lines that maybe they're a rabid fan of this or that, but for me, Ludwig's up there at the top as far as rabid following, tradition.
Yeah, and I think regardless of if those are the drums that really speak to you, I think everyone can acknowledge that in terms of importance, they invented the bass drum pedal. Like,
Right.
they're really the pioneers of the drum set as we know it. So that is reaching some pretty hallowed ground by
Right.
getting to collaborate with them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out and show us a little bit about your process and everything you're doing here. Just to be a little teaser, I sent you a drum to work on for me, and I got to be here today for a little bit of the process.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see the final result soon,
Yeah.
so people can look forward to that. But if people want to follow your work or reach out to you or learn more about having you work on a drum for them, what's the best way to stay in touch?
Best way to reach me, I've got a website, handshakedrums.com. Best way to reach me is through Instagram, Handshake Drums. Just send me a DM and I'll get back to you.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.